Hey, greetings from Gary, Indiana. This is Sam Love, the incomplete set collector. I'm going to take a break from baseball here, go over to basketball, and bring you something I'm really excited to share with you tonight. So hit subscribe, give a like. Thanks to those who've left comments on my first videos, and stick around. We're going to talk about the Gary Steelheads. So what was it like to go to a game in downtown Gary, Indiana in the year 2000, 2001? Well, I grew up in the area, so I'd have a different sense of the place than someone who's never been there before. But let me try to get in the mindset of someone who's never been there. I think the first thing you'd notice going to downtown Gary back then at night was just how empty it was. The lights were out. You would hear the low, rumbly hum of the steel mill, maybe the din of the toll road, which was in between downtown Gary and the mill. You might hear the clang of the South Shore train coming through. But that was it. Just a couple of years ago, I had a group from IUPUI, which is a university here in Indiana, in Indianapolis. They were up for a visit, and we were taking them around. We were in the downtown area, and a bunch of them had to go to the bathroom. I said, well, is there a restaurant we could stop at? And I said, well, first of all, it's Sunday, so everybody's in church or at home. There's nothing. And there, even if it was any other day, there's just nothing open. So we had to take them to the bus station to go to the bathroom. So downtown Gary in 2000, it was empty. The city had about 100,000 people, according to the census that year, and that was down from about 120,000 from 10 years previous. There had been a fire in the downtown in 1997 that resulted in a couple of blocks being leveled, a number of buildings being ruined. So yeah, it was really empty. And then the main roads, which were 4th and 5th Avenues, which are US 12 and 20, and then Broadway, at that time it was empty. The only people who really would have been in downtown Gary would have been people who worked downtown. It would mostly be city or state or the workers in the court system. Yeah, the stamp on the back tells me these photos are from the January 10th, 2001 game against Sioux Falls. So, yeah, it gives you a sense about how many people would be at a game in the early days. Most of the home fans were sitting around here, so there might be like twice as many people on this side as there were on that side. Yeah, I think the attendance might be around, you have 1,000 people or so there. There's the Jesse White tumblers. That's pretty cool. And then this was the only one on the cheerleading team who had any rhythm. I remember her. I used to go to these games with my buddy Judd. Judd Meinhard. His favorite sport was professional wrestling, but he loved Gary. He worked for the power company one summer, and he was mostly working around downtown Gary, and he loved it. He said he'd park in an alley and take a nap, and the people he ran into really cool. So most of our other friends from high school and college had moved on by that point, and it was just me and Judd around town. So yeah, we'd come up to these games. I think we were probably some of the only white folk there at first, but look who we got there. The Gary Casino was the only one in his chain that was making a profit when that went bankrupt. You want to laugh about my city? I'll tell you what, the rest of this country is going to be like Gary real quick here. Might be able to learn something from us. I know I've learned quite a lot from the people here. I don't know what year this was. It might be the first year, because the games don't necessarily line up to what this had, but it was all a mess. Here's 2 programs. I know I had more. So Saturday the 10th, Tuesday the 13th. Yeah, it was something to do. I had 10, 12 games maybe that year. I think tickets were $10 for the upper deck. Oh, here's how I could find out, right? see. Yep, first season. The IBL officials and the crazy dunkers. And here we have a cartoon character. Jimmy King of the Fab Five. That was like the big name. Yeah, not being a huge basketball fan, I'm really not going to recognize too many of the names. But players I do remember for the Steelheads, like TJ Lux, who I went to high school with. He played for a little bit. Carson Cunningham, who played down at Purdue. He was there. I remember seeing him play. I think the biggest name I remember, well, Jimmy King, obviously. But Olden Polynice, who I remember seeing him play on TV back in the 90s in the NBA. And then there was this kid, Leon Smith, who was from Chicago. This is a tragic story. Just, one of those young phenoms. Grew up a ward of the state. Just all that pressure comes hitting, and had a couple of tastes up in the NBA and just difficult to make the adjustment. You have mental illness issues as well, but he played a few games. I remember him playing for the Steelheads as well. So real motley mix of players. And the CBA itself, I don't know if this was a reputation that went back to the earliest days or if this is something that developed over time. Because, the NBA wasn't always as flashy and big as it was starting in the 1990s. But I can definitely remember in the 80s the CBA having a reputation of being a lower grade league, if you will, kind of a dirt league. Players who were on their way down from NBA careers, players who were never going to be able to have that. They would sign guys who, he got suspended or banned from the league for drug issues. Just things like that. Really, I don't know. I don't care either. This here fan from the Gary Printing Company. Really cool. I always liked the logo. I had a little basketball too. And I don't know where that got to. It's probably around here somewhere. And I feel like this, that's barely going to fit. I'm not going to play with the tripod here. I feel like this was during the championship run of 2006, but I could be wrong. Yeah. Probably got some more stuff elsewhere. I wish I had more, that's for sure. That's where the food court, not in right here, but behind this, that's where the food court was. I'll talk about that in a little bit. That was amazing. That became an amazing thing. That probably became one of the things you really look forward to the most. 12th game of the season. So just kind of starting out and something to do downtown Gary. I picked these two guides up on eBay about 20 years ago. The league itself goes back even before the NBA. In fact, the CBA would bill itself as the world's oldest professional basketball league as a way to increase its credibility because the detractors would call it the Cockroach Basketball Association for reasons I might discuss in a bit. But the league started in April 23rd, 1946 as the Eastern Pennsylvania Basketball League. It was 2 months before the NBA was founded. It went through a number of name changes in the 50s and 60s. By 1970, it was the Eastern Basketball Association, and it's at this point it starts its role as sort of a feeder league into the pros, the high pros, the NBA and the ABA at that time. Also in the 70s, they did something kind of interesting. They put a franchise in Alaska in 1977. So you have the Eastern Basketball Association and one team in Alaska, the Northern Knights. And it was a stunt that paid off. It got them a bunch of attention, and they changed their name the next season to the CBA, the Continental Basketball Association. The stature of the league grew in the 1980s. I remember seeing games on ESPN and BET. They introduced some rule changes to make it more of a higher scoring, action-packed kind of game. So like no foul outs, a sudden death overtime, collapsible rims. I remember they had I think they pioneered the $1 million halftime fan shot, if I'm not mistaken. And then the other thing which persisted into the Gary Steelheads was the somewhat confusing 7-point system. All right, the 7-point system, real briefly. Instead of ranking teams by the win-loss percentage, they used a point system, which was, I think, devised to kind of keep things more competitive in the game and throughout the whole season. So if you won the game, you got 3 points, and then you got a point for each quarter that you, quote, won. So you could have a situation where a team wins, but they only get 6 points because, let's say, the losing team got more points in the fourth quarter. So that was meant to keep things more competitive. It was a little confusing. I don't think it mattered. You never really heard too many people talking about it much anyway. I mean, the basketball wasn't very good those first few years anyway. So 1999. This is a wild ride. In August that year, Isaiah Thomas purchases the CBA for $10 million. His plan is to make it an official development league of the NBA. Right? March 2000, the NBA offers to buy the CBA from him for, I think it was $11 million. So he could have made a profit. He turns it down. Keep this in mind. Now, a couple months later, June 28th of that year, Isaiah Thomas announces that he will be the head coach of the Indiana Pacers. He will have to sell the CBA, signs a letter of intent to sell it to the NBA Players Association, and then the NBA comes out and announces the formation of their own development league. And that after the 2000-2001 season, they'll be cutting their ties with the CBA this season here. And on February 8th, 24 games into the season, the CBA folds. I tell you, it was a wild ride. So the Steelheads and a few of the other teams, their owners bought this, I think for like $1, they bought the share that the league had owned, and they ended up joining the International Basketball League, which was an even lower rung of the independent minors. No, they don't really have minors in basketball, but I think you know what I mean. That league was founded in '99, and then it ended up folding at the end of the season. What happened, so some of those teams, and then Gary, and then some teams from the International Basketball Association, the IBA, reconstitute. They end up picking up from receivership the name and logos and all of that of the CBA, and in November 2001, the Cockroach Basketball Association is once again back. So combined, the Steelheads ended up with 16 wins and 38 losses that year. Not very good, but they started attracting more people. The game experience itself became a lot more professional. That food court, holy cow. Should I talk about that? No, we'll hold off on that food court a little bit. Second season, the 2001-2002 season, it did a little better, 22 and 34 in the reconstituted CBA, which was fourth place. So that was a step up. And then in 2002-2003, which was my last year living in Northwest Indiana before moving to Chicago, even better, above 500 actually, 25 and 38 for a third place. Didn't make the playoffs, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then 2003-04, 27 and 21, again, third place. And they made the playoffs this year. I definitely remember attending those games. 04-05, not too good. 17 and 31, fourth place, didn't make the playoffs. And then 05-06, and again, I'm living up in Chicago at this point, but I do remember going down to catch some games, and I do remember going to the playoff games. But that season, they were 29 and 19. Second place in their division, conference champions, but in the end, lost to Yakima. Oh, I remember it was a heartbreaker. And that was it for the Steelheads and the CBA. They ended up leaving the league, but they never made any money. It was always a losing proposition. It also didn't help that the team's owner, Jewel Harris Sr., who was a power broker here in Northwest Indiana, got convicted of federal extortion charges and sentenced to prison. So the team ended up with his son. And one of the things that the new ownership said in their move to the United States Basketball League was that they felt they'd attract more people coming out in the spring and summer. The CBA played in the winter. I don't know, I thought that was part of the charm, though. There's something about basketball. It's cold outside. You don't want to sit outside and watch baseball. So you come in into a warm, hopefully warm environment and enjoy that, right? The Genesis Center was a fantastic place for basketball, too. It was really bright. They did a great job, for the most part, keeping it clean. The bathrooms could get a little overwhelmed sometime, and the Genesis Center had its own problems as well. It's a totally different history, but as far as a basketball venue went, it was probably one of the best lit out of all of the arenas that CBA teams played in. And I know a lot of commentators and players, agreed with that, and they really enjoyed playing there. The court looked great, as you can see here. Bloody well loud in there, I could tell you that. So the food court, let me tell you about that. So I don't remember there being too many offerings at first. The way things go around here, you just kind of pull it together on the fly. But eventually they got it all together. And, I don't quite remember how it progressed, but just remember at one point, you could go in, they had hot links, or you get Harold's chicken. Oh, man, get that with the hot sauce. See, a lot of people like the mild sauce. I like the hot sauce. Get that and beer. The beer was really cheap because this is Gary, Indiana, not Chicago. So beer was probably $2 or $3, and we wouldn't get loaded because we have to drive home, of course, but we would definitely enjoy ourselves and eat well. So it wasn't just the sporting event, but that was going to be dinner for the night, and a lot of fun. The basketball? No, I'm no judge of basketball. I really don't know that much about it. I just, passively enjoy it. But I'll say this: my father, who actively enjoys basketball, this was bad basketball. On the end for the Steelheads was 2008, 1 year before the CBA folded. Actually, they were in the a new international basketball league, completely different from the one they joined in 2001. Had a great year, actually. 18-4, first place, and unfortunately they did not have any money. They didn't have enough money to do the playoffs, pay the players, get the transportation, so they opted out, and that was basically the end. It was the recession of 2008. So low-grade minor league basketball wasn't going to cut it, and that was the end of that. It was a hell of a good time while it lasted, and definitely glad I made those games. I always regret there was a minor league baseball team in 1995, the Merrillville Mud Dogs, and I regret never going. I couldn't find anybody who wanted to go with me. I also worked a lot of evenings in the summers that year, so I'm glad I didn't pass up the opportunity to go to the Steelheads games, and maybe the basketball wasn't that great, but the experience really was, and always a fun time to do something like that in Gary, Indiana. So hope you all enjoyed that. There's some great stuff on the web about the Steelheads. Just go search that out, and hope you enjoyed this. Again, I'll be having a bunch more videos coming out, a lot of stuff about Gary, Indiana in the works, and of course baseball card videos. They'll all be coming up on the Incomplete Set Collector. So this was Sam Love, Gary, Indiana. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave some comments. You be safe out there. You take care.